Introduction. Psychology is the scientific study of behavior and mental processes. This course review will guide you through the major topics in introductory psychology, using clear explanations and structured chapter summaries to help you understand the material. You will explore how psychologists use scientific thinking, how the brain and nervous system shape behavior, how we sense and interpret the world, how we learn and remember, and how we grow and change throughout our lives. We will also examine personality, social behavior, psychological disorders, and therapeutic approaches, giving you a comprehensive overview of the field. Each chapter includes narration, key insights, and study questions with brief pauses, so you can test your understanding before hearing the answer. Let's begin our journey into the science of psychology. Chapter 1. Thinking critically. With psychological science, psychology begins with the idea that our intuitions about behavior are often unreliable. Human thinking is full of shortcuts, biases, and errors that can mislead us when we try to understand ourselves or other people. For example, hindsight bias makes us believe we predicted events after they happen. We look back and say, "I knew it," even though we didn't. Another common problem is overconfidence. People often trust their knowledge and judgments more than they should, leading them to make mistakes without realizing it. These cognitive tendencies show why psychology needs scientific methods rather than intuition alone. The scientific method helps psychologists gather evidence in a structured, objective way. Researchers begin with a theory, which is a broad explanation of behavior. From this theory, they form a hypothesis, which is a specific, testable prediction. They then design studies to collect data, analyze the results, and replicate the findings to see if they hold up across different situations and people. Psychologists use three major research methods. Descriptive research observes and records behavior as it naturally occurs. This includes case studies, surveys, and naturalistic observation. It helps psychologists understand what is happening. Correlational research looks at the relationship between two variables. It tells us how strongly two factors move together, but it cannot tell us whether one causes the other. Experimental research is the only method that can show cause and effect. In an experiment, researchers manipulate one variable while controlling others, allowing them to determine whether changes in one factor directly cause changes in another. Ethics are essential in psychological research. Participants must give informed consent, meaning they understand what the study involves. Researchers must protect people from unnecessary harm, keep their data confidential, and explain the purpose of the study afterward in a process called debriefing. Scientific thinking requires curiosity, skepticism, and humility. Psychologists must be willing to question assumptions, evaluate evidence, and accept that they may be wrong. This critical mindset is the foundation for every other topic in psychology. Study questions. Chapter 1. Study question 1. What is hindsight bias? Hindsight bias is the tendency to believe you predicted an outcome after you already know what happened. Study question 2. What is a hypothesis? A hypothesis is a testable prediction that comes from a broader theory. Study question 3. What makes experiments unique compared to other research methods? Experiments are the only research method that can demonstrate cause and effect relationships. Chapter 2. The biology of behavior. Our thoughts, feelings, and actions all arise from biological processes within the body. The nervous system is the body's communication network, responsible for transmitting signals that allow us to move, think, sense, and respond to the world. At the most basic level, this system depends on neurons, specialized cells that send electrical and chemical messages. Neurons have several key parts. The dendrites receive messages, the cell body processes them, and the axon sends signals onward. When a neuron fires, it generates an electrical impulse that travels down the axon until it reaches the synapse, the tiny gap between neurons. Communication between neurons happens through chemical messengers called neurotransmitters. These chemicals cross the synapse and bind to receptors on the next neuron, influencing everything from muscle movement to mood. Different neurotransmitters have different functions. For example, serotonin is linked to mood regulation, dopamine to reward and motivation, and acetylcholine to movement and memory. The nervous system has two major parts: the central nervous system and the peripheral nervous system. The central nervous system, or CNS, includes the brain and spinal cord. It is the body's command center, processing information and coordinating responses. The peripheral nervous system connects the CNS to the rest of the body and has two main branches: the somatic system, which controls voluntary movements, and the autonomic system, which regulates automatic functions like heartbeat and digestion. The autonomic nervous system has two opposing divisions. The sympathetic nervous system activates the body for action, preparing us for fight or flight. It increases heart rate, releases energy, and sharpens focus. The parasympathetic nervous system does the opposite. It calms the body after stress, conserving energy and supporting rest and digest functions. The brain itself is a highly complex organ with many structures working together. The brainstem controls basic survival functions like breathing and heart rate. The limbic system is involved in emotion, motivation, and memory. Structures such as the amygdala, hippocampus, and hypothalamus play key roles in fear, memory formation, and internal regulation. Above these deeper structures lies the cerebral cortex, responsible for higher-level processing. It is divided into 4 lobes: frontal, parietal, temporal, and occipital. The frontal lobes are involved in planning, decision-making, judgment, and personality. The parietal lobes process touch and spatial information. The temporal lobes handle hearing and language, and the occipital lobes are dedicated to vision. One of the most remarkable things about the brain is its plasticity, its ability to change and adapt. Plasticity allows the brain to reorganize after injury, strengthen new connections during learning, and adjust to new experiences. This adaptability continues throughout life, though it is strongest during childhood. Lastly, psychologists study the interaction between nature and nurture. Genes influence our traits, behaviors, and vulnerabilities, but environment shapes how these genetic tendencies develop. Biology and experience constantly interact to shape who we are. Study questions. Chapter 2. Study question 1. What is a neurotransmitter? A neurotransmitter is a chemical messenger that carries signals across the synapse from one neuron to another. Study question 2. What is the role of the sympathetic nervous system? The sympathetic nervous system prepares the body for action by increasing arousal and energy during stressful situations. Study question 3. What is brain plasticity? Brain plasticity is the brain's ability to change, reorganize, and form new neural connections throughout life. Chapter 3. Consciousness and the two-track mind. Consciousness refers to our awareness of ourselves and our environment. It includes our thoughts, perceptions, feelings, and the mental processes that shape how we experience the world. Although consciousness feels unified, the brain actually processes information on multiple levels at the same time. Psychologists describe the mind as operating on 2 tracks. The conscious track is deliberate and controlled. It is responsible for focused attention, problem-solving, and decision-making. The unconscious or automatic track works beneath awareness. It handles routine tasks, habits, and fast reactions without requiring active thought. This dual processing allows us to function efficiently, even when we are not paying attention to every detail. Selective attention is the ability to focus on a specific stimulus while ignoring others. This is why we can have a conversation at a noisy party or concentrate on a task while background noise fades away. However, selective attention has limits. Inattentional blindness occurs when we fail to notice something visible because our attention is directed elsewhere. Sleep is another key part of consciousness. Humans cycle through different sleep stages each night, including light sleep, deep sleep, and rapid eye movement, REM sleep. REM sleep is especially important because it is associated with vivid dreams, emotional processing, and memory consolidation. Throughout the night, we move repeatedly through these stages, forming sleep cycles that typically last about 90 minutes. Sleep serves many important functions. It helps restore energy, supports physical health, and plays a major role in learning and memory. Lack of sleep can impair attention, weaken the immune system, and increase stress. Common sleep disorders include insomnia, narcolepsy, sleep apnea, and night terrors. Each of these conditions disrupts normal sleep patterns in different ways. Dreaming remains one of the most fascinating aspects of sleep. Some theories suggest that dreams help us process emotional experiences, while others propose that dreams help consolidate memories or reflect the brain's internal activity during sleep. No single explanation fully captures the purpose of dreaming, but it likely serves multiple functions. Consciousness can also be altered by psychoactive drugs, substances that change perception, mood, and behavior. Depressants slow down brain activity, stimulants increase energy and alertness, and hallucinogens distort sensory experiences. These substances can affect judgment, memory, and coordination. Addiction is a complex condition involving compulsive drug use, despite harmful consequences. It arises from a combination of biological, psychological, and social factors. People may become dependent on substances due to genetics, emotional struggles, social influences, or the chemical effects of the drug itself. Understanding addiction requires recognizing how these factors interact. Study questions. Chapter 3. Study question 1. What is dual processing? Dual processing is the idea that the mind operates on both a conscious, deliberate track and an unconscious, automatic track at the same time. Study question 2. What is selective attention? Selective attention is the ability to focus on one specific stimulus while filtering out other information. Study question 3. What happens during REM sleep? During REM sleep, the brain is highly active, dreams are vivid, and important emotional and memory-related processing occurs. Chapter 4. Developing through the lifespan. Human development is a lifelong process that begins before birth and continues through old age. Psychology studies how we grow physically, cognitively, and socially across the major stages of life. Although people differ widely in their experiences, development tends to follow predictable patterns. Prenatal development begins with conception and continues through 3 major stages: the germinal stage, the embryonic stage, and the fetal stage. During this time, the organism grows from a single cell into a fully formed fetus. Environmental influences, such as alcohol, drugs, or extreme stress, can interfere with development. These harmful agents are known as teratogens and can result in lifelong physical or cognitive problems. Infancy and childhood are periods of rapid growth. Newborns arrive with certain reflexes, such as rooting and sucking, which help them survive. As they grow, their brains form millions of neural connections. Motor development follows a sequence, such as lifting the head, sitting up, crawling, and eventually walking. While the timing varies, the order of milestones is typically consistent. Cognitive development during childhood was famously studied by Jean Piaget, whose theory describes how children actively construct their understanding of the world. He identified 4 major stages: the sensorimotor stage, when infants learn through sensory experience; the pre-operational stage, when children use language but lack logical reasoning; the concrete operational stage, when thinking becomes more logical; and the formal operational stage, which includes abstract and hypothetical thinking. Piaget's theory highlights how thinking changes qualitatively as children mature. Social and emotional development also take shape in early life. Attachment is the bond that forms between infants and caregivers. Secure attachment, where the caregiver is responsive and dependable, supports healthy emotional development. Insecure attachment can occur when care is inconsistent or neglectful. These early relationships influence later social functioning. Adolescence marks the transition from childhood to adulthood. It is a time of physical changes driven by puberty, as well as major cognitive and social growth. The brain continues to develop, especially areas involved in reasoning, planning, and impulse control. Adolescents form stronger identities, explore values, and navigate increased independence. Peers and social media often play large roles in shaping behavior. Adulthood includes early, middle, and late stages, each with distinct challenges and opportunities. In early adulthood, people often focus on careers, relationships, and establishing independence. Middle adulthood may involve reevaluating life goals or adapting to new responsibilities. Late adulthood brings changes in physical health, memory, and social roles, but many older adults remain active, engaged, and mentally sharp. Although aging brings losses, it also brings wisdom, emotional stability, and meaningful connections. Across the lifespan, development is influenced by both nature and nurture. Genetic predispositions shape our potential, but environment and experience determine how that potential unfolds. Development is dynamic, ongoing, and shaped by the interaction between biology, psychology, and social context. Study questions. Chapter 4. Study question 1. What are teratogens? Teratogens are harmful agents, such as drugs or alcohol, that can negatively affect prenatal development. Study question 2. What is attachment in developmental psychology? Attachment is the emotional bond between infants and caregivers that influences later social and emotional development. Study question 3. What characterizes Piaget's formal operational stage? The formal operational stage involves the ability to think abstractly, reason logically, and consider hypothetical situations. Chapter 5. Gender and sexuality. Gender and sexuality influence how people experience themselves and relate to others. These concepts involve biological factors, social expectations, and personal identity. Psychology examines how they develop, how they vary across individuals and cultures, and how they influence behavior. Biological sex is determined by chromosomes, hormones, and anatomy. Typically, individuals with XX chromosomes develop female anatomy, and those with XY develop male anatomy. Hormones such as estrogen and testosterone play major roles in sexual development, especially during puberty. However, biological sex is more complex than a simple binary. Intersex individuals, for example, are born with variations in sex characteristics that defy typical male or female categories. Gender refers to the social and psychological aspects of being male, female, or another identity. Gender identity is a person's internal sense of their gender. Most people identify with the gender typically associated with their sex, but some identify as transgender or non-binary. Gender expression refers to how people present their gender through behavior, clothing, and mannerisms. Society shapes gender roles, expectations about how individuals should behave based on their perceived gender. These roles influence how people see themselves and how others treat them. Gender roles vary across cultures and change over time. Psychologists study how children learn these expectations, often through modeling and reinforcement from parents, peers, and media. Sexual orientation describes a person's enduring pattern of romantic or sexual attraction. People may be attracted to the opposite sex, the same sex, more than one gender, or no one at all. Orientation is influenced by a combination of biological, psychological, and social factors. Studies suggest that genetics, hormone exposure during development, and brain structure may contribute to variations in orientation, along with environmental influences. Human sexuality involves both biological drives and personal experiences. Desire, attraction, and romantic relationships are shaped by hormones, social context, culture, and individual preferences. People differ widely in their sexual interests and behaviors, and these differences are normal expressions of human diversity. Throughout life, individuals continue to explore and refine their understanding of gender and sexuality. Puberty brings biological changes that heighten sexual feelings and interest in relationships. Adulthood often involves forming intimate partnerships, navigating romantic commitments, and understanding personal identity more deeply. Psychologists emphasize that gender and sexuality are multidimensional. They involve biology, identity, expression, relationships, and culture. Understanding this complexity helps reduce stereotypes, promote acceptance, and support healthy development. Study questions. Chapter 5. Study question 1. What is gender identity? Gender identity is a person's internal sense of their own gender, which may or may not align with their biological sex. Study question 2. What are gender roles? Gender roles are societal expectations about how individuals should behave based on their perceived gender. Study question 3. What factors influence sexual orientation? Sexual orientation is shaped by a combination of biological, psychological, and social influences. Chapter 6. Sensation and perception. Sensation and perception are the processes that allow us to take in information from the world and make sense of it. Sensation refers to the detection of physical energy from the environment. This includes light waves for vision, sound waves for hearing, and chemical molecules for taste and smell. Perception is the process of interpreting and organizing this sensory information so that it becomes meaningful. The process of sensation begins with sensory receptors. These specialized cells detect energy and convert it into neural signals, a process known as transduction. Each sense relies on different types of receptors. For example, rods and cones in the retina detect light, while hair cells in the cochlea detect sound vibrations. Perception is not simply a mirror of the world. It involves active interpretation based on experience, expectations, and context. Top-down processing uses prior knowledge and expectations to shape perception. Bottom-up processing relies more on the raw sensory input. Both processes work together to help us understand our environment. In vision, the eye focuses light on the retina, where rods and cones convert the light into neural impulses. These signals travel through the optic nerve to the brain, where the visual cortex interprets features such as color, shape, and motion. The brain uses depth cues, patterns, and organization principles to turn incomplete visual information into a coherent image. Hearing begins when sound waves enter the ear and vibrate the eardrum. These vibrations are amplified and passed into the cochlea, where hair cells convert them into neural signals. Pitch, loudness, and location are all processed by the brain to help us interpret what we hear. Other senses provide information about touch, body position, taste, and smell. Touch involves pressure, pain, warmth, and cold receptors in the skin. Taste detects sweet, sour, salty, bitter, and umami. Smell occurs when airborne molecules bind to receptors in the nasal cavity. The vestibular sense helps maintain balance, while proprioception tells us where our body parts are in space. Perception can be influenced by many factors. Attention determines what information we focus on. Motivation and emotion shape how we interpret ambiguous stimuli. Cultural experiences can affect perceptual habits as well. These factors show that perception is not passive. It is shaped by the brain's expectations and experiences. Study questions. Chapter 6. Study question 1. What is the difference between sensation and perception? Sensation is detecting physical energy through sensory receptors, while perception is interpreting and organizing sensory information. Study question 2. What is transduction? Transduction is the process by which sensory receptors convert physical energy into neural signals. Study question 3. What are top-down and bottom-up processing? Top-down processing uses prior knowledge and expectations, while bottom-up processing starts with raw sensory input. Chapter 7. Learning. Learning is the process of acquiring new information or behaviors through experience. Psychologists study how learning occurs and the conditions that make it stronger or weaker. Classical conditioning involves learning through association. It occurs when a neutral stimulus becomes associated with a meaningful stimulus and produces a similar response. Ivan Pavlov's experiments with dogs are a classic example. Classical conditioning explains everyday behaviors such as emotional reactions, phobias, and taste aversions. Operant conditioning involves learning through consequences. Behaviors followed by rewards are strengthened, while those followed by punishment are weakened. B.F. Skinner developed much of what we know about operant conditioning. Reinforcement increases behavior, while punishment decreases it. Reinforcement can be positive or negative, depending on whether something is added or removed. Observational learning occurs when people learn by watching others. Albert Bandura's work with the Bobo doll experiment showed that children imitate adult behavior, including aggression. This type of learning explains how children acquire language, gestures, and social behaviors. Cognitive factors also play a role in learning. Expectancies, thinking, and mental maps influence how associations form. People learn best when they predict outcomes and understand the consequences of their actions. Study questions. Chapter 7. Study question 1. What is classical conditioning? Classical conditioning is learning through association between two stimuli. Study question 2. What is reinforcement in operant conditioning? Reinforcement increases the likelihood that a behavior will occur again. Study question 3. What is observational learning? Observational learning is learning by watching and imitating others. Chapter 8. Memory. Memory is the ability to store and retrieve information over time. It involves 3 key processes: encoding, storage, and retrieval. Encoding is the process of getting information into memory. Some information is encoded automatically, like the sequence of your day. Other information requires effortful processing, such as studying for an exam. Storage is maintaining information over time. Memory is often described using 3 stages: sensory memory, short-term or working memory, and long-term memory. Sensory memory holds brief impressions of the environment. Working memory temporarily stores and manipulates information. Long-term memory is a vast storehouse of knowledge, skills, and experiences. Retrieval is accessing stored information when needed. Retrieval cues, such as context or emotional state, help trigger memories. Sometimes retrieval fails due to interference or forgetting. Memory is not perfect. It is reconstructive, meaning that the brain fills in gaps using expectations and prior knowledge. This can lead to memory errors, distorted recollections, or false memories. Improving memory involves using strategies such as rehearsal, chunking, mnemonics, and making material personally meaningful. Sleep also plays an important role in consolidating memories. Study questions. Chapter 8. Study question 1. What are the 3 main processes of memory? The 3 main processes are encoding, storage, and retrieval. Study question 2. What is working memory? Working memory is a limited capacity system that temporarily holds and processes information. Study question 3. What does it mean that memory is reconstructive? It means the brain builds memories by combining stored information with expectations and context, which can lead to errors. Chapter 9. Thinking, Language, and Intelligence. Thinking involves mental processes such as reasoning, problem-solving, and decision-making. Concepts help us group similar objects and ideas. We solve problems using strategies like algorithms, heuristics, and insight. Heuristics are mental shortcuts but can lead to biases such as availability or confirmation bias. Language is a system of symbols used to communicate. It involves grammar, syntax, and semantics. Children acquire language naturally through exposure, imitation, and built-in cognitive mechanisms. Intelligence refers to the ability to learn, solve problems, and adapt to new situations. Psychologists debate whether intelligence is a single general ability or multiple specific abilities. IQ tests measure certain cognitive skills, but do not capture all forms of intelligence. Genetics and environment both play roles in intellectual development. Study questions. Chapter 9. Study question 1. What is a heuristic? A heuristic is a mental shortcut that allows quick judgments but can lead to errors. Study question 2. What is intelligence? Intelligence is the ability to learn, solve problems, and adapt to new situations. Study question 3. How do children acquire language? Children acquire language through exposure, imitation, and innate cognitive abilities. Chapter 10. Motivation and Emotion. Motivation refers to the processes that guide behavior toward goals. Biological motives include hunger, thirst, and bodily needs. Psychological motives include achievement, autonomy, and social belonging. Emotion involves physiological arousal, expressive behavior, and conscious experience. Different theories explain how these components interact, such as the James Lange theory, Cannon-Bard theory, and Schachter-Singer two-factor theory. Stress is a form of psychological and physical tension that occurs in challenging situations. Chronic stress can harm health, but coping strategies like exercise, social support, and relaxation techniques help manage it. Study questions. Chapter 10. Study question 1. What is motivation? Motivation is the process that initiates, directs, and sustains behavior toward goals. Study question 2. What are the 3 components of emotion? The 3 components are physiological arousal, expressive behavior, and conscious experience. Study question 3. What is stress? Stress is the psychological and physical response to challenging or threatening situations. Chapter 11. What drives us? Hunger, sex, friendship, and achievement. Human behavior is not random. We are driven by needs, desires, and goals that push us to act in particular ways. Psychologists call these internal forces motivation. This chapter explores 4 powerful motivators: hunger, sexual motivation, the need to belong, and the need to achieve. Motivation often starts with physiological needs. One classic view is that when a need, such as hunger, arises, it creates a drive that pushes us to reduce the need and restore balance in the body. But motivation is not just biological. Thoughts, emotions, habits, and culture also shape what we want and how we behave. Hunger is one of the most basic drives. The body monitors energy levels using signals such as blood sugar, hormones, and stomach activity. When energy drops, the brain, particularly areas in and around the hypothalamus, helps trigger feelings of hunger. But hunger is not purely physical. We also respond to external cues: the sight and smell of food, the time of day, social settings, and cultural norms around meals. These cues can prompt eating even when the body does not urgently need energy. Our preferences for certain foods are also shaped by experience. We tend to like foods we are familiar with and those associated with comfort or positive emotions. Culture influences what is considered normal or appealing. At the same time, serious disruptions in eating patterns can lead to eating disorders, where psychological and social pressures interact with biology to disturb normal eating behavior. Sexual motivation is another powerful drive. Biologically, sex is linked to hormones, reproductive systems, and brain mechanisms that generate desire and pleasure. Hormone levels can influence sexual interest over the lifespan. However, sexual motivation is also strongly shaped by psychological and social factors, such as personal values, relationship context, cultural expectations, and media messages. People differ widely in their sexual interest and behavior, and these differences reflect a blend of biological predispositions and life experiences. Beyond physical needs, humans have a deep need to belong. We are social creatures who seek connection, acceptance, and close relationships. Being part of a group brings comfort, security, and a sense of identity. When we feel included and supported, our well-being improves. In contrast, rejection and isolation can lead to emotional pain, anxiety, and even physical health problems. Social exclusion can make people feel angry, sad, or numb, and may push them to withdraw or act out. The need to belong helps explain why people conform to group norms, work to maintain relationships, and feel strong emotions about social acceptance. Another key motivator is achievement. Achievement motivation is the desire to accomplish goals, meet standards of excellence, and master tasks. Some people have a strong need to achieve and feel energized by difficult challenges. They tend to set realistic but challenging goals, persist through setbacks, and take responsibility for their outcomes. Effort, practice, and perseverance, sometimes called grit, play a major role in long-term success. Social support, feedback, and opportunities also shape whether achievement motivations are fulfilled. Together, these drives, hunger, sexual motivation, the need to belong, and the need for achievement, illustrate how biological, psychological, and social forces interact to guide behavior. Understanding what drives us helps explain everyday choices and long-term life patterns. Study questions, Chapter 11, Study Question 1. What is motivation in psychology? Motivation is the internal process that initiates, directs, and sustains behavior toward goals. Study Question 2. How is hunger influenced by both biological and environmental factors? Biologically, hunger is driven by signals such as hormones and energy levels monitored by the brain, while environmental factors like food cues, social settings, and cultural norms also strongly influence when and what we eat. Study Question 3. What is achievement motivation? Achievement motivation is the desire to meet standards of excellence, accomplish challenging goals, and develop competence, often supported by persistence and effort over time. Chapter 12. Personality. Personality is a person's characteristic pattern of thinking, feeling, and behaving. Psychodynamic theories emphasize unconscious motives. Trait theories focus on measurable characteristics such as the Big Five traits. Humanistic theories highlight personal growth and self-actualization. The Big Five personality traits include openness, conscientiousness, extroversion, agreeableness, and neuroticism. These traits are relatively stable across time and situations. Study questions. Chapter 12. Study Question 1. What are the Big Five personality traits? The Big Five traits are openness, conscientiousness, extroversion, agreeableness, and neuroticism. Study Question 2. What is a personality trait? A personality trait is a consistent pattern of thoughts, feelings, and behaviors. Study. Question 3. What is self-actualization? Self-actualization is the motivation to reach one's full potential. Chapter 13. Social psychology. Social psychology studies how people think about, influence, and relate to one another. Topics include conformity, obedience, social roles, attitudes, persuasion, group behavior, and prejudice. People conform to social norms due to pressure or desire for acceptance. Obedience studies, such as Milgram's, reveal how authority can influence behavior. Group behavior can lead to phenomena like social loafing or groupthink. Prejudice involves unjustified negative attitudes toward a group. Reducing prejudice involves cooperation, equal status, and supportive norms. Study questions. Chapter 13. Study question 1. What does conformity mean? Conformity is adjusting behavior or thinking to match a group standard. Study question 2. What is obedience? Obedience is following orders from an authority figure. Study question 3. What is prejudice? Prejudice is an unjustified negative attitude toward a group or its members. Chapter 14. Psychological disorders. Psychological disorders are patterns of thoughts, feelings, or behaviors that cause significant distress or impairment. Anxiety disorders involve excessive fear. Mood disorders include depression and bipolar disorder. Schizophrenia involves hallucinations, delusions, and disorganized thinking. These conditions arise from biological, psychological, and social factors. Study questions. Chapter 14. Study question 1. What defines a psychological disorder? A disorder involves thoughts, feelings, or behaviors that cause distress or dysfunction. Study question 2. What is schizophrenia? Schizophrenia is a disorder involving hallucinations, delusions, and disorganized thinking. Study question 3. What are anxiety disorders? Anxiety disorders involve excessive fear, worry, or avoidance. Chapter 15. Therapy and treatment. Therapy involves techniques for helping people manage psychological disorders. Approaches include psychodynamic therapy, cognitive behavioral therapy, humanistic therapy, and biomedical treatments such as medication. Cognitive behavioral therapy is widely used for anxiety and depression. Medications can help regulate neurotransmitters. Effective treatment often combines therapy, social support, lifestyle changes, and medication when needed. Study questions. Chapter 15. Study question 1. What is psychotherapy? Psychotherapy is psychological treatment that helps people understand and change thoughts, feelings, and behaviors. Study question 2. What is cognitive behavioral therapy? Cognitive behavioral therapy focuses on changing negative thoughts and behaviors. Study question 3. What are biomedical treatments? Biomedical treatments include medications and medical procedures that affect the brain and body. Conclusion. Psychology offers a powerful framework for understanding human behavior. From brain function to personality, from development to social influence, each chapter reveals how complex and dynamic people truly are. By studying psychology, you gain insight into yourself, others, and the world around you. Thank you for taking this journey through the science of behavior and mental processes.